to Reclaim Your Wholeness for Wednesday, December the 6th, 2017. And today I am bringing you the topic of emotions. And this is a pretty broad topic. And I guess I would just like to start with this general idea that our emotions are not something that we are used to or encouraged to be with directly. And I know that often when I work with clients, especially when I work with men, this idea of identifying feelings or emotions can be really quite a foreign concept, and yet so important, because when I think of emotion, I don't remember who did it, but there's this idea of like emotion is broken down into the E, which is energy, and then motion. So it's emotion is energy and motion. And there's a lot of truth to that, because when we are not connected to how we're feeling, the emotion tends to come out sideways. And because it is wanting to move, it is wanting to not be stored in our body. And I know that for myself, I'm currently working on moving anger that's stored in my body, and getting some support with that. And it's funny because that message came to me years ago, and I believe that in my world, I was forced to like suppress anger and to store it in my body. And I know that I'm not alone with that, and there's all sorts of different ways that that shows up. And it really makes me think of some of those more black and white shadows that are easy to kind of recognize. And so when we judge someone else for being angry, we're also judging ourselves for that same way of being that we don't allow ourselves to be. And the thing about these emotions is, one, that they want to move. They don't want to be stored. They want to leave and be expressed. We don't have to look any further than nature to see that, or animals. You know, I think of dogs that they react quite quickly when there's danger or fear. They growl, and that's just a very natural way of being for them. And then literally they shake it off and go on to the next thing. Whereas we as humans don't necessarily shake it off. We store those experiences, and they impact us. And so then we have a situation where we're at the corner store and the person behind the counter doesn't do something we want, and then we have this opportunity to release anger, and it ends up being it doesn't feel good. We're releasing this anger and moving the energy, but it doesn't actually feel good. Or perhaps it's with our partner in relationship. And so the key is to find ways to move these emotions. And I talk about anger as one because I think it's the one that, excuse me, that we can identify with the easiest, but there's many others. And part of this challenge of working with emotion is to know what emotions we're dealing with, and to be able to label them and bring words to them. And I know that, you know, in some of the work that I've done, it's like I've done some work with the Mankind Project, and they start with, you know, mad, sad, or glad. And it helps to sort of narrow down what it is we're feeling, or to identify some of those feelings. The other thing that I have really enjoyed working with is part of Nonviolent Communication, which is a book written by Marshall Rosenberg. And if you go to the Center of Nonviolent Communication, they have a reference sheet, which is helping to identify feelings. And I'll just show that to you, and I'll actually share the link below the video. But it's super, super helpful to be able to identify. And so there's actually 2 pages for this feelings inventory. And if we look at the first page, these are all feelings that come about when our needs are satisfied. And so these are the more positive feelings, and they've broken it down into categories. So you can see that there's affectionate, engaged, hopeful, confident, excited, grateful, inspired, exhilarated, joyful, peaceful, refreshed. And so underneath each of those, there's a further breakdown of those feelings that fall under those categories. And then on the second sheet, there is a list of feelings when our needs are not satisfied. And we see things like afraid, confused, annoyed, embarrassed, tense, vulnerable, pain, disquiet, aversion, sad, yearning. And so we can, again, further break down where these emotions are coming from. So for example, vulnerable would be an interesting one, and feeling insecure. Annoyed tends to be where the angry feelings are. At any rate, it's a really useful tool to be able to dial in and look at what is it that I'm really feeling, and start to identify and engage these feelings. So like I said, I'll share the link to that in the comments, and just really helpful to, begin to identify and work with our feelings and emotions, and ultimately finding ways to express these emotions so that they're literally moving rather than being stuck. And like I mentioned, the shadow, that there's this duality of, and I think anger is a good one. Anger, when it's not grounded, can come out and be really hurtful. But anger can also be that inner fire that helps us to get things done and helps us to move into action, and can be the motivator in positive ways. And yeah, there's all sorts of ways to work with emotion, both positive and negative. And we suppress joy just as quick as we suppress anger. And so it's both. And we've had all sorts of experiences that create that disconnection from our emotions. And so really this video is just about an invitation to start to bring language to what you might be feeling, and to bring awareness to it, and to bring some observation so that we can begin to reclaim our relationship to these emotions. And emotions are such a powerful way to express who we are, what we've experienced. And when we suppress them, we're really not allowing that full expression of who we are to be out in the world. So really just wanting to, as I said, bring some awareness to this, create some thoughts, and I trust that this message is helpful and supportive in whatever way it needs to be. And I look forward to bringing you another message perhaps next week.